Strobe Studios presents Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger in The Watson Files. Coming to you from the illustrious Strobe Studios in the heart of America, this is Scott Strosahl. And now, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.
Come in.
Good evening, Doctor.
Well, hello, Scott.
You seem rather chipper this week.
Well, now that Professor James Martin is in jail, things are looking up.
But you thought he was dead just a couple weeks ago.
Indeed, but he can't suffer underground.
I suppose that's true.
So, I assume you'd like to hear a story.
Why else would I be here? Not that I don't enjoy your company.
Of course, I understand. Tonight, we're heading east.
East? You mean like New York?
Keep going.
Overseas?
China, my friend.
We're going to China?
No, I mean in the story.
Oh, I see. So tonight's story took place in China?
Well, no, not really. It was just in Chinatown.
So New York then?
All right, fine. You guessed right.
So, you were visiting New York with Spencer?
Oh, no, we didn't go anywhere. But the victim was a patient of mine who had recently moved to town from New York.
So, all that talk of heading east was...
Drama, Mr. Strosahl. I'm attempting to create drama. Now, do you mind if I tell my story?
I wish you would.
Well, several years ago, I had a unique patient, a young boy with lead poisoning. His parents had first brought him to my office when they arrived in town, shortly after his 7th birthday. They were concerned about the ongoing exposure he had suffered back in New York. I monitored the situation, and it seemed to be getting better until I received a call from them at the hospital.
Thanks again, Dr. Watson.
Of course, I'm glad I could help. Just make sure you keep up with those medications now.
Oh, I will.
He's not going to take those pills for more than a week.
No one ever does, Mary, but I have to try.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it for the day?
Yep. Mr. Torelli canceled. Again. So you might actually get out of here on time.
It'll be the first time in weeks.
Tell me about it. Should I let the machine get it?
No, you'd better answer it.
All right. Dr. Watson's office? Yes? Oh, hello, Mr. Cheng. You're where? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, yes, of course. Let me see if he's available. It's Mr. Cheng. His son is in the hospital.
All right, tell him I'm just heading out and I'll stop by on my way home.
Okay. Mr. Cheng? Yes, Dr. Watson says he'll be there shortly.
Oh, and find out what room he's in.
Yes, and what room should he go to? Okay, thanks. Room 112. So much for getting home on time.
Indeed.
Jack, what are you doing here?
Visiting a patient. What about you?
A kid was admitted with lead poisoning, so we're investigating.
The Cheng boy?
Yeah, you know him?
That's who I was coming to see. His father called about half-hour ago, just as I was leaving the office. Now, why are the police involved?
Well, his lead levels were quite high, and so the doctors were concerned.
Yes, I have been treating him for it.
Well, apparently it's not working.
What do you mean? His levels have been coming down.
Well, the doc says they're up.
That doesn't make any sense. The boy was exposed at his apartment back in New York City, and the Chengs specifically had their home checked before moving in because of his condition.
Well, he's getting it from somewhere.
Well, I'd better stop in and say hi.
Watson, you made it.
Holmes? How did you know I was here?
Well, I didn't.
Then why are you...
I called him.
You didn't think he just notified you, did he?
He didn't notify me.
Well, then what are you doing here?
The boy is his patient.
I see.
Now, what does that mean?
Don't worry, Jack. You're not a suspect.
That remains to be seen.
I'm going to go talk to the Changs.
Good, you can introduce me.
Wait, Holmes?
Mr. and Mrs. Cheng?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chang. He left his manners at home.
Ah, Dr. Watson, thank you for coming.
Of course. This is my associate, Spencer Holmes.
Ah, nice to meet you.
Charmed, I'm sure.
How's he doing?
Not so good, I am afraid.
Is he able to answer a few questions?
Yes, he should be. Doan, you have visitor. You remember Dr. Watson.
How are you doing?
Okay, I guess.
Do you mind if I ask you some questions?
Okay.
Have you eaten anything unusual lately?
No.
Maybe one of your friends gave you something, or...
Oh, he doesn't really have any friends here, and my wife makes nearly all of his meals.
What about restaurants? Do you eat out much?
No, never.
Just with Nigel.
Nigel? Who's Nigel?
I am
And you are?
Nigel Jennings, the Cheng's attorney.
An attorney? Are you in trouble?
Nigel takes Doan to McDonald's about every Friday. The move has been very hard on Doan, and he's been very helpful.
I represent them in their lawsuit. Against whom? The city of New York.
Are you serious?
Someone needs to be held responsible for their negligent use of lead paint in their urban renewal districts.
You mean someone needs to pay for your next yacht?
Oh, excuse me.
No, come on in, please.
I just need to take his vitals again.
Of course. We'll step outside for a few minutes.
I'd like to stay if that's all right.
Oh, of course.
I'll be right outside if you need anything. It's a real tragedy, isn't it?
I don't understand how this could have happened.
Well, obviously he's still being exposed to lead.
Oh, good. Mr. Obvious is here.
But how could that be? They had their home checked just after they moved.
What about at school?
They only moved 2 months ago. It's still summer break.
Daycare. Mr. Cheng doesn't work.
Maybe a babysitter or something? But they don't strike me as the type to be going out a lot.
And 1 or 2 trips to an exposed house shouldn't raise your levels that much.
I have another theory, or actually Dr. Samuelson suggested it.
Let's hear it.
He mentioned that there are several home remedies popular in the East that involve lead and other heavy metals.
Like Metallica and such. This is hardly the time for jokes, Mr. What was your name again? Holmes. Oh, yes. Oh,
You'll have to excuse him. He's a bit insensitive at times.
yes, much like a mass-taught lawyer. Think what you like, Mr. Holmes, but I am only trying to help the Chengs.
Well, you two can stay here and argue, but we're gonna go check out the Cheng's home.
You can't just search their home without permission.
Oh, really? Even with this warrant? I may not be a big fancy attorney from New York, but we still respect the Constitution around here, Counselor.
Well, I'm coming along. As am I.
All right, off to the circus we go.
I don't know what you're hoping to find.
That's the thing about fishing. You just throw out your net and see what gets caught. Sometimes it's just an old boot, but every once in a while you catch a big old stinky catfish.
Speaking of stinky catfish,
What do you got there?
looks like some sort of recipe.
For what?
Well, I'm not sure, but it looks like one of those folk remedies Dr. Samuelson mentioned.
Where did you find that?
Right here, in the desk.
Don't even think about claiming he planted it. We were all right here.
I warned them about this.
Well, I guess we better get back to the hospital. I'm gonna have to go
Not
around.
just yet, Weathers.
Why not?
This recipe, if that's what it is, was not used by the Chengs.
How do you know?
Well, for several reasons, actually, but the main one is the numbers.
The numbers?
Look at this recipe.
Yes?
What numbers do you see?
Well, there's a 2 here, and a 4, and a couple 1s.
Exactly.
I don't follow.
If the Chengs are using Asian folk remedies, they are also likely to follow many of the superstitions.
And they would never use the number 4.
Because it's homophonous with the word death.
Well, then how do you explain this paper then?
I believe Mr. Jennings might be able to shed some light on it. Me? What are you talking about? Weathers, have that paper dusted for prints, and I'm quite certain you'll find Mr. Jennings. Well, that doesn't prove anything. And a search of his home will likely find the source of lead that he has been slipping into Dewan's food at McDonald's every week. That's preposterous.
And why would he do that?
Well, I think that's pretty obvious.
The lawsuit.
Precisely. Believe it or not, Watson has been too successful in treating his patient, and the lawsuit was in danger.
Well, I'll see what I can figure out, but in the meantime, you're gonna stay with me.
So I assume that Holmes was correct and Jennings was behind it after all?
Yes, quite. It appears that the lawyer had his eyes set on a big payoff from the city of New York and did not want to let that go.
As lawyers are wont to do.
Not that I'd like to say anything bad about lawyers. If there are any out there, just saying.
Well, I guess you were right. That was a unique case.
Yes, quite unique.
So what do you have planned for us next week, Doctor?
Next week's story involves a man who is both a brother and a son to the same person.
Okay, well, sounds interesting. I guess I can't wait. Tonight's Watson Files adventure was written by Scott Strosahl. Spencer Holmes and Dr. Watson were played by Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger. Additional voices were provided by Steve Rimpici, Solomon Strosahl, and Kasey Strosahl. Until next week, this is Scott Strosahl saying good night from Stroby Studios.
He didn't notify me.
Well, then what are you doing here?
The boy is my patient. Oh, that's not my line, it's Weathers. Have you eaten? Have you eaten? Have you eaten? Why am I having a problem with the word eaten? Next week I'll tell you a story about a stinky catfish. Because I said those words, so it must be true. Sure.
Please. Let's do it.
Been ready for like an hour. God.
Stroby Studios presents impatient Michael Helgens and Greg Kilberger in The Watson Files.
That's us. Let's go.
Coming to you from the illustrious Stroby Studios in the heart of America, this is the slow Scott Strosahl.
That reminds me of a joke.
I so hope you're just going to leave this.
It reminds me of a joke. You ready? Knock, knock. Greg, I'm going to need your help because Scott sucks.
want me?
Who's
there?
The impatient cow.
The
impatient
impatient
cow.
cat. Thank you. Would you hurry up and join the doctor already? Good Lord. Killing me.
And eventually, let's join the doctor and see what story he has for us today.